Well, good morning, and once again, welcome to a legal studies teacher reads the news. Today, we've got an article about intellectual property, and it involves a former Spice Girl in trademarks battle with Australian skincare company. It's by Michaela Whitburn, April 2020 at 12 a.m. Fashion designer and former Spice Girl Victoria Beckham has taken a Sydney-based skincare company to court over two trademarks featuring the letters VB, arguing customers would be confused into thinking she endorsed the products. VB Skin Lab, which is based in Homebush West, is seeking to register the trademarks VB Salon and VB Skin Lab in Australia to market beauty salon services, skincare products, and cosmetics. Miss Beckham, who uses her initials, i.e., VB, to market a luxury women's wear range and a line of cosmetics developed in collaboration with beauty behemoth Estee Lauder, unsuccessfully opposed the registration of the trademarks last month. IP Australia, the government agency that administers intellectual property rights, described Ms. Beckham in a decision on March 9 as an individual from the United Kingdom who is a well-known figure in the fields of music, being a former member of the Spice Girls, and fashion. It said it was not satisfied that any confusion would arise between the Sydney company's logos and Miss Beckham's own VB trademark. This is a post guessing from Twitter or Insta or one of the various other social media things of Victoria Beckham. VVB, pre-spring summer. Very fashionable woman wearing an outfit. New VVB press 20 arrivals. Discover at the link in bio and 36 Dover Street. Kiss VB. The businesswoman and former pop star also sought to oppose the registration of the trademark on the basis the Sydney company was acting in bad faith. All right, a couple of things before we continue on. What is IP Australia? This is IP Australia. As you can see, it's got the government logo there, which is very helpful when you're trying to work out what it is. We are the Australian government agency that administers intellectual property rights and legislation relating to patents, trademarks, designs, and plant breeders' rights. There you go, new one. Our vision is to have a world-leading intellectual property system that builds prosperity for Australia. So that's what they do. Basically, what we're talking about here is this concept that if I invent something, I'm going to create a patent for it, which basically says, this is my idea, this is my invention. And for 20 years, I'm able to sue anyone who copies me and says it's their idea. Similarly with trademarks. So what are trademarks? A trademark is a way of identifying a unique product or service. It's a form of brand protection which distinguishes between your products or services and those belonging to your competitors. A trademark's not just a logo. It can be a letter, number, word, phrase, sound, smell, shape, logo, picture, movement, aspect of packaging, or a combination of these. What's the purpose of it? It provides you with exclusive rights to use, license, and sell the mark. It's also a valuable marketing tool because the value of your trademark increases with the success of your business. So if we're thinking about over here, this concept for consumers, we're looking at laws relating to consumers as a reflection of changing values and ethical standards. So this idea of that's my property, and people understand the concept of that. Issues of compliance and non-compliance with trademarks, and the role of law reform in recognizing the rights of consumers. Now, for that one, you might be sitting there thinking, what has that got to do with the rights of consumers? Well, if somebody's using a cheap knockoff, I have a right to know that. And as a consumer, I have a right to feel like that when I'm purchasing something, I'm understanding what the company is and what it stands for, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why we have trademarks and patents, et cetera, et cetera. So thinking through this, regulation of marketing and advertising, statutory protection, non-statutory controls on advertising would certainly be the thing that I'd be thinking of here. But you've got a bunch of other things as well. Federal government organisations for IP, industry organisations. How well do other industries take this? How seriously do organisations take this when it comes to that concept? Product certification, maybe. But they're the main ones. Now, what's happening here with Spice Girl Victoria Beckham as My wife commented she's been an incredibly successful fashion designer, I think for longer now than she was a Spice Girl. So she might be a little upset about this former Spice Girl label that has been put on her, but we'll continue. So she's saying that the company's acting in bad faith. What's that mean? Or IP Australia rejected that argument, saying it could not conclude the company was seeking to take advantage of the reputation of Miss Beckham's trademark or acting in a way that was unscrupulous, underhanded, or unconscientious. In other words, she's claiming that this company is trying to make money and business off her name, that they're acting in bad faith. They've made it similar to her name, etc., and they're trying to trick consumers and saying, we're actually endorsed by Victoria Beckham when they're not. IP was also unpersuaded that the company's use on its website of a photo of an attractive female model with long dark hair was in any way a reference to the star. Furthermore, the mere fact that the cosmetics company has used an attractive female model with long dark hair in connection with their products is hardly a basis to assert bad faith, the decision said. IP Australia ordered the star to pay the company's legal costs. In other words, she's taken them to court, and IP Australia have said, no, that's actually completely fair enough. They're allowed to have an attractive female as their role model. They're selling makeup. And just because she's got brown hair does not mean that she's supposedly Victoria Beckham. Miss Beckham has lodged an appeal in the Federal Circuit Court, so she's using her money and her clout to take this even further. In documents filed in court, lawyers for Miss Beckham said she has an extensively used and promoted the VB wordmark in Australia and overseas in relation to various beauty and fashion-related goods, including cosmetics. They say the Sydney's company's VB logos would be likely to deceive or confuse Australian consumers into believing its products were sold or sponsored by the star. So that's the argument they're making. It comes down to this concept, doesn't it? A regulation of marketing and advertising and compliance and non-compliance and protecting consumers from buying something that might not actually be what it's claiming to be. They also say the company was aware of Miss Beckham's use of the VB trademark and intended to benefit from falsely representing to consumers that it was associated with her. The Sydney company sought to register its trademarks in circumstances where a reasonable person standing in its place adopting standards of acceptable commercial behaviour would not have done so, Miss Beckham's lawyers argue. This is a nice little aside here with this word that is often used in law. What does a reasonable person? So a reasonable person standing in its place adopting standards of acceptable commercial behaviour. So in law, there's this concept that, well, how come, if someone's claiming, oh, I didn't know that I was breaking the law, or I wasn't aware that that person did this, or I didn't know that, they use a reasonability test. The concept is, would a reasonable person have known that? Should a reasonable person have understood that it was illegal to take that without paying for it, etc., etc.? If you want to, there's a couple of podcasts you can check out. The original one, I believe, was used in English common law, and it was a reasonable person was someone on the Clapham bus, I think it was, or the Clapham tram. Check it out, Clapham, and you can have a look at that if you're interested there. But they're basically claiming you can't say that this company didn't understand that VB meant Victoria Beckham, that they would get something out of this. Miss Beckham has asked the court to set aside IP Australia's decision, reject the company's application to register the trademarks, and order the company to pay her costs of the appeal and the original hearing. The dispute is listed for a preliminary hearing in the Federal Circuit Court on April 22. So I'll come back to that in a few days and we'll see what's going on. But what's happening here? It's a very simple concept. Intellectual property is this idea that if I'm selling something, the name that's on it represents something. Maybe it represents quality, maybe it represents trendiness, maybe it represents a very, very successful company that's done something a particular way. And so you, when you're buying that product, understand that that trademark, that's, the various things that make a company recognizable, they're what you're buying as well. So a certain watch looks a certain way. Everyone knows that that watch is this. If you're purchasing, I'll give you an example. Very, very successful jewelry company, Tiffany & Co. They don't have a specific kind of name or anything like that that first springs to mind, what they have is a color. It's that color there. It's a very, very common color, or common color, very, very recognizable color. And if my internet was working better, here we are. You can see they use it for everything. If I want to contact them, that's the color. The box that things come with, that's the color. The color of the boxes. The website would be that color if it properly loaded. So there's an example of a company that has a recognizable trademark that's not a particular like word, it's not a particular font, it's a color. And so that kind of thing springs up all the time, and you'll have intellectual property disputes looking at and saying, is this color too similar to Tiffany and Co.'s blue or light blue or Heaven's Raven blue or whatever it is. So there's that concept, another example of it. And Spice Girls, Victoria Beckham has this VB that she is claiming is hers, and an Australian cosmetics company can't use it because they are pretending to be her and that she has endorsed their brand. So something to think about when it comes to consumers, protecting consumers, compliance and non-compliance, and regulation of marketing and advertising.